This video isn't about how to pick up younger women. That would be trivial. It's about how to transform what many see as a weakness, the age difference, into a silent weapon of influence. Because there's a chasm between the mature man who attracts and the one who begs for validation disguised as kindness. And the line between these two isn't age, it's positioning. In the real world, older men are constantly taught to seek security, stability, and predictability. But what magnetizes young women isn't certainty, it's risk, it's not logic. It's the subtle game of tension, mystery, and the perception of implicit value. And here's the paradox that many ignore. The more you try to compensate for your age with good intentions, the further you move away from what really works, you become predictable. And predictability for a woman in a phase of emotional exploration is practically a social tranquilizer. Friedrich Nietzsche already said, "What is good? Everything that increases the feeling of power." Now, apply that to the dynamics of attraction. If your approach diminishes your power, your presence, or your confidence, it's not good, even if it seems respectful. Respect without magnetism is just politeness. And politeness without tension is invisibility. But make no mistake, most older men don't fail because of a lack of attributes. They fail because they operate with the wrong mental code. They enter the game of seduction with the logic of someone seeking approval, not with the energy of someone who is the very embodiment of rare experience. This condemns them to become too nice, too caring, too generous, and therefore disposable. And here comes one of the great lies sold out there, that age is a problem. A lie. Age only weighs on those who have never learned to make time work in their favor. A mature man who masters body language, psychological positioning, and strategic communication has more power than any 20-year-old with a defined jawline. Because attraction in its essence is not biological, it's narrative. And whoever controls the narrative controls the game. Just 3% of men ever unlock this. And once they do, their entire reality shifts. You'll understand why too much gentleness is a hindrance, how the myth of the ideal provider sabotages your presence, and what the brutal truth is that makes younger women surrender to older men without even understanding why. This knowledge isn't for everyone. It's for those who are willing to see themselves as a structure to be rebuilt. What you're about to hear might hurt your ego, and if that happens, great. It's a sign that your pathetic version is dying. It's at that moment, the moment you decide to act cautiously, that your presence begins to die because you think being respectful is the same as being harmless. And you think being harmless is the same as being kind. But the female brain doesn't react to kindness the way you've been conditioned to believe. Her mind reacts to what represents power. And men who seem to beg for acceptance, even disguised as gentlemen, are perceived not as secure, but as predictable. And predictable for her brain is what she already knows how to deal with. In other words, boredom. It's in this fatal error that most mature men fall. The fantasy of the nice uncle is an emotional trap that seems virtuous on the outside, but reeks of desperation on the inside. You approach with an overly broad smile, overly ready compliments, overly careful opinions. You behave like a father, speak like an HR consultant, and expect to be desired like a lover. This is such a great energetic incoherence that sexual tension dies before it is born. She doesn't even resist, she simply feels nothing. And that's the most invisible problem, the absence of tension. You're not rejected with words, nor with contempt. You're rejected by a lack of impact. She doesn't even realize there was an interaction. And the cruelest part, you leave the situation thinking you were too polite or respected her space. No, you were simply expressionless. The tragedy of the nice guy is that he's never remembered for who he is. He's only remembered for what he didn't have the courage to be. He wanted to be desired, but he was cordial. He wanted to be memorable, but he was predictable. He wanted to be a wolf, but he presented himself as a domesticated lamb. And what makes it all worse is that this behavior is socially validated. Since childhood, you've heard that you should be polite, offer flowers, pull out the chair, pay the bill, and listen attentively. And that, of course, has its value. But when this behavior comes loaded with the energy of "please like me," it ceases to be charming and becomes a veiled plea. Younger women, more sensitive to social games, easily sense this. They don't verbalize it. They just feel it. Why does this happen? Because the man who positions himself as the nice guy starts from an emotional place of indebtedness. He acts as if he needs to compensate for the age difference. He doesn't see the value in his maturity, doesn't perceive the natural authority he carries, doesn't recognize the advantage of his own experience. So he tries to balance the game by offering too much. He talks too much, listens too much, helps too much, praises too much, and everything in excess is tiring. But worse than that, it reveals anxiety. The truth is simple. The more you try to please, the more she feels you need her. And what is a need for you is a loss of value for her. Evolutionary psychology is clear. Human beings desire what has symbolic value. And symbolic value is what is not immediately accessible. What is rare is precious. And you trying to appear too accessible and kind become abundant. In other words, disposable. Let's be honest. You've seen this movie before. The older man who arrives, smiling, asks too many questions, laughs at everything, says he works in something interesting, says he prefers to respect her time, and leaves with her number saved as Uncle Morrow event help. He's not seen as a threat, but he's also not seen as a man. And here comes the cruel contradiction that nobody told you. The way to be perceived as secure isn't to seem nice, it's to seem stable. And stability isn't servitude, it's emotional center. When you present yourself as someone who has control of their own energy, their own presence, who looks you in the eye and maintains silence comfortably, he radiates security, but a magnetic security, not passive. That's why the nice guy fails, because he's passive. He doesn't act, he reacts. He waits for an opening. He needs permission. He seeks the green light. And younger women in their phase of high sexual value don't give the green light to someone who doesn't awaken anything. They don't play the game with someone who's already defeated. And maybe you'll say, but I'm a mature, confident guy. I don't want to play games. Great, but understand one thing. It's not about manipulation. It's about not giving yourself away like a dog wagging its tail. There's a fine line between being confident and being submissive. And it's drawn by how you see yourself in the interaction. If you enter a conversation with a younger woman believing you need to prove something, you've already lost. If you position yourself as cool enough for her to ignore the age difference, you've already declared inferiority. If you're there to try to convince her, you've already put her on a pedestal. And nobody wants someone who kneels before the kiss. The problem isn't in treating someone well, it's in treating them as superior. Because by acting too nice, you're not increasing the value of the interaction. You're diminishing your own. And this is perceived in micro-expressions. The way you lean in, the way you respond too quickly, the automatic smile, the lack of pauses in your speech, all of this screams insecurity. And her brain, trained to recognize dominance, interprets this as weakness. Cleopatra, the seductive queen of Egypt, approached great generals with charm, but also with symbolic power. She didn't ask permission to seduce. She was the experience. She knew that positioning herself as the prize, not the candidate, created a magnetic field in which the other person felt privileged to be chosen. And this is where the mature man needs to wake up. He's not there to be accepted. He's there to show that time has molded him into something no boy can offer: presence, control, and depth. If you walk into a bar or event and look at younger women as if they're beyond your league, you've already excluded yourself from the narrative. You've excluded yourself before even entering the game. The female mind doesn't reject age, it rejects insecurity. And the nice, careful, predictable man is insecurity disguised as politeness. And when you understand this, everything changes. You realize that seduction doesn't begin with what you say, but with what you don't try to show. It begins with comfortable silence, a gaze that doesn't avert itself, measured speech, the absence of urgency. It begins when you no longer feel the need to be accepted, and you start filtering who deserves access to your energy. Because the true power of a mature man isn't in trying to be like younger men, it's in not competing with them. It's in offering what they lack: emotional intelligence, centeredness, a rare presence, and an energy that seeks nothing but attracts everything. The most comfortable lie is the one that validates your effort. And few myths are as comforting and destructive as this one, that younger women only want stability, money, and a man to support them. This idea is an emotional shield for the wounded male ego. It's an elegant way of saying, she rejected me because I'm poor. Instead of facing the brutal truth, she rejected you because you were boring, harmless, monotonous, too reasonable to be desirable. The figure of the provider has always had an important social role. Since tribal times, the male who brought resources was valued by the group and yes, often desired by women. But this model is dying. And the reason is not just economic, it's psychological. The archetype of the man who provides has become insufficient because modern women already support themselves. They have income, careers, freedom, and most dangerous for the man who still operates with a scarcity mindset. They have options. Does this mean that money has lost its value? No. It still has weight. But seduction isn't a transaction of resources. It's a war of perception. And what's at stake isn't who offers more comfort, but who provokes the most emotional impact. Young women aren't looking for a father with a black card. They're looking for a rare experience. A man who understands what even they can't verbalize. Desire doesn't arise from what is useful. It arises from what is unstable, exciting, daring, and symbolically powerful. And that's where the myth of the provider breaks down. Because it starts from a logical premise, but attraction isn't logical. Attraction is drama. It's chaos. It's surprise. A predictable man who tries to buy desire with comfort is like a magician who shows the trick before the show. There's no fascination. There's no game. And without a game, there's no seduction. Robert Greene was surgical when he said that the true seducer awakens love before awakening lust. Because love, or rather enchantment, disarms. It makes the victim of seduction surrender from within. And what makes someone surrender emotionally? A sequence of emotional experiences that challenge, provoke, and unbalance. None of this is present in the provider archetype. He delivers security, yes, but security kills desire when it's not balanced with unpredictability, mystery, and intensity. A man who enters a restaurant with a younger woman trying to demonstrate value through ostentation doesn't understand how the female mind works. She may accept the expensive wine, the refined dish, and the polished conversation. But if at no point does she feel intrigued, challenged, or emotionally pulled out of her mental routine, you've just paid an exorbitant bill for a dinner she'll forget in 2 days. Because real value isn't in what you offer, it's in what you awaken. And awakening something in a woman isn't the result of a resume, status, or bank account. It's the result of symbolic energy. When you enter a room and radiate presence without needing to justify anything, you dominate. And dominating doesn't mean oppressing. It means being the silent center around which the interaction orbits. Let's consider a simple scene. 2 men enter a bar. One of them wears an expensive suit, a shiny watch, and talks about investments, international travel, and his properties. The other dresses elegantly but subtly. He doesn't rush to speak. He observes. He knows when to be silent. He has a gaze that examines without seeming vulgar. When he speaks, he doesn't compliment. He provokes. He doesn't try to convince. He questions. And when she provokes him, he laughs as if he's seen the game played 1,000 times. Now ask, which one will she want to understand better? That's the essence of high seduction. It's not what you show, it's what you make her want to discover. And the provider errs precisely by showing everything. He transforms his supposed advantage, status, and stability into excessive exposure. He tries to convince, and every effort to convince is a testament to need. Now, think about the women you know, the younger, prettier, freer ones. What do they have in common? An excess of supply. Men who offer the world, proposals, promises, trips, gifts. And what do? They often choose men who offer nothing besides emotional impact. Because the truth is this: when a woman feels she can have everything from you effortlessly, she loses the desire to have anything. This is where we get to a sensitive point. You can have money, stability, and even good looks, but if your presence reveals that you're using all of that as a bargaining chip for attention, you're doomed. Because a woman can tell when your status comes from a place of excess than when it comes from a place of emptiness. Today's young woman doesn't want a man who pays her bills. She wants a man who makes her question her certainties, who takes her breath away with an off-script comment, who knows how to use silence, a brief touch, a strategic absence to create tension. She wants a man who observes her intensely, not one who analyzes her with fear. And above all, she wants to feel that by his side, something within her is being challenged. You don't challenge a woman by being a provider. You challenge her by being a mirror of what she doesn't control within herself. You intrigue her when you don't respond as expected, when you don't compliment her like everyone else, when you don't get excited about her body like a teenager, When you manage to maintain control, even when her beauty tries to steal it. And how do you reach that level? It's not by memorizing phrases or showing off figures. It's by destroying the fragile ego that needs to be loved to feel like a man. It's by killing within yourself the belief that value comes from external validation. And above all, it's by understanding that younger women aren't looking for a ready-made man. They're looking for a journey that reveals layers. And a man who has layers doesn't give everything away at once. He only shows what's necessary to keep the fascination alive. You don't need to pretend to be something you're not, but you need to stop offering your stability as if it were the entrance to a theme park. You need to understand that emotional security isn't in what you give, but in what you retain. The magnetic man doesn't try to fill the woman. He provokes her to expand, and that's only possible when he knows what she really wants, even if she hasn't discovered it yet. So, the next time you think about positioning yourself as the guy who will take care of her, ask yourself, does she need care or chaos, comfort or emotional confrontation, of stability or of a man who makes her forget that the outside world exists? Perhaps the biggest mistake older men make is wanting to appear better than the younger men. That's ego. The true master of seduction doesn't compete. He transcends. Because he knows that when a woman realizes she's not facing a man, but an experience she can't find anywhere else, no age, status, or standard can withstand it. The first time you understood that your age could be an obstacle, it wasn't because someone told you. It was because you felt it. Maybe in her quick glance at a younger boy, maybe in a comment about different phases of life, or maybe in that awkward silence after you said your age. That icy instant when everything inside you contracts, and there the belief was born. They don't want older men, but that belief isn't real. What she doesn't want is a man who's old inside. Because the brutal truth, which nobody wants to say out loud, is that age isn't the problem. The problem is what your energy communicates when you enter a room. Age is only a burden when it's loaded with insecurity. When every word you say sounds like it's asking for permission. When your body language is more tense than her gaze. When your speech has that tone of, give me a chance and I'll prove I'm different. This kind of energy isn't about lifespan. It's about emotional time. And what is emotional time? It's about how much of life you've truly absorbed, how much you've digested your pain, overcome your shame, rebuilt your identity without needing the world's approval. That's what builds presence. And presence doesn't have an expiration date. You know why? Because what generates respect, what makes a younger woman see you as a reference, as someone she wants to listen to, approach, and even surrender to, isn't your age. It's your emotional authority. And emotional authority isn't shouting, it isn't self-affirmation, it isn't arrogance, it's comfortable silence, it's an upright posture, it's a firm, unhurried tone of voice, it's a gaze that doesn't move like a radar searching for acceptance, it's the absence of anxiety, it's the absence of justification, it's being who you are without apologizing for it. That's the essence of respect. And respect, when combined with stable masculine energy and subtle emotional provocation, transforms into inevitable attraction. Because she doesn't expect that from you. She's used to two extremes. The younger man who is all impulsive and emotionally unstable, and the older man who tries to compensate with exaggerated gentleness and career talk. But when she meets an older man who looks her in the eye as if to say, "You're interesting but not essential," she's disarmed. And disarming a woman is the first step to making her desire you. Because desire is born from mild discomfort, from non-verbal challenge, from the feeling that she needs to decipher you. And most older men don't offer that. They offer predictability. And predictability in environments of desire equals invisibility. Therefore, the real question isn't how to win over a younger woman. The real question is how to become impossible to ignore. And the answer lies in micro-behaviors. A mature man who attracts doesn't try. He moves confidently, speaks less, observes more. He doesn't compete with younger men. He observes them with a sly smile, knowing they're still stuck in the struggle. He's been through this before. He's already experienced the desperation of trying to impress. Now he simply is. And it's this tranquility that is enchanting. She doesn't know why, but something inside her begins to open up. What does this man have? He doesn't get excited. He doesn't flatter. He doesn't show explicit intentions. He seems almost too comfortable. And this too much is what generates tension, because women sense when they are in the presence of someone who has already understood the game. And when that happens, she wants to see how far it goes. It's at this point that the game changes because you're no longer trying to prove you're worthy of her. You're observing whether she's worthy of your attention, and that changes everything. Now, be careful. This isn't arrogance. This is selectivity. The energy is different. Arrogance shouts. Selectivity observes in silence. Arrogance needs to be noticed. Selectivity already knows it will be. Arrogance judges. Selectivity chooses. And that's why younger women are interested, because she senses that there is a man there with a filter. A man who doesn't act out of neediness, but out of choice. And choice is key. When you show yourself to be a man who has options, not just women, but experiences, lifestyles, deep conversations, powerful silences, you become rare. And what is rare attracts because the human brain values scarcity. And the man who operates with inner abundance becomes scarce by nature. Let's get down to brass tacks. Instead of talking about your job, get her to talk about what makes her eyes sparkle. Instead of praising obvious beauty, comment on something subtle and unexpected, like her speaking rhythm, her word choice, how she reacts to silence. Instead of trying to impress with achievements, share a past failure with emotional detachment, not as drama, but as a journey to overcome. All of this triggers a perception in her. He's not trying to win me over. He's simply being himself. And that's irresistible because seduction isn't performance. It's inner coherence. And that coherence only arises when you stop trying to be someone to please and become someone she needs to decipher. You know what generates the most respect? Knowing how to say no. Knowing how to end a conversation when it loses energy. Knowing how to distance yourself from someone beautiful who adds nothing beyond aesthetics. Knowing how to set boundaries without losing elegance. That's what separates the magnetic man from the overly available man. And respect, when it transforms into fascination, is the most powerful force you can generate. It's in this symbolic realm that attraction happens, not on a rational level, but on the level of perception. And the perception a younger woman needs to have when looking at you isn't this guy is trying something. This guy knows what he's doing, and I want to understand why. Therefore, forget about age. Forget about generational differences. What matters is what your presence communicates without words. Because the most powerful language of seduction isn't verbal, it's energetic. And energy doesn't lie. If you convey doubt, hesitation, neediness, she feels it. But if you convey centeredness, dominance, provocation, and a lack of haste, she feels that, too. Young women aren't stupid, they're hypersensitive. And that's why, if you want to stand out, you need to stop behaving like someone who's trying for a chance, and start behaving like someone who offers an emotional experience she doesn't find with boys her own age. And here's the final paradox. When you stop caring about being accepted, you become irresistible, because you start vibrating in a field of scarcity, of silent power, of real magnetism. And in that field, age disappears, and respect turns into desire. And if you want to level up your dating life with younger women, check out our downloadable course, The Seducer's Blueprint, for a full framework on how to talk to younger women, link in description.